Marry my mom and I will give you this
Hit
doll.
that like button right now. What a child is about to do will make you believe in miracles. A little girl makes a deal with a dangerous man, and what happens next will change her life forever. This story will make you cry. Seriously, get tissues ready. The apartment was small, really small. The kind of place where you could hear everything happening in every room at the same time. Thin walls, squeaky floors, a single window in the living room that looked out at a brick wall across the alley. This was where Sophie Chen lived with her mother, Maria. Maria worked 3 jobs. That's not an exaggeration. That's just what she did to keep them alive. She cleaned offices at night. She worked at a coffee shop during the day. She did laundry for rich people on the weekends. She was 28 years old but looked older because she was tired all the time. The kind of tired that comes from never sleeping enough and worrying too much. Sophie was 7 years old. She had dark hair like her mother and her father's eyes, or so her mother said. Her father had left when Sophie was a baby, just gone one day, left behind a daughter he'd never meet and a mother who'd have to work 3 jobs to keep them from being homeless. Sophie went to school, but she didn't like it much. School was where other kids had parents who picked them up. School was where teachers asked about your family, and you had to lie and say everything was fine. School was where you watched other kids get new shoes when theirs wore out, instead of tape holding them together. But Sophie had something other kids didn't have. She had imagination, and she had Mrs. Martinez, her 3rd grade teacher, who told her she was smart and creative and special. Mrs. Martinez gave her extra attention, and Sophie loved her for it. Sophie also had a doll. Her name was Rosie. She was old and worn, and the hair was matted from being loved so much. Rosie had one eye that closed when you laid her down, and one eye that stayed open. Her dress was faded pink, but Rosie was everything to Sophie. That doll was the only thing Sophie owned that wasn't necessary for survival. Tommy Russo started showing up at the coffee shop where Maria worked. He was a big guy, tall, muscular in the way that comes from lifting weights in the prison yard, not the gym. He wore expensive clothes and gold chains and rings that caught the light. He had scars on his knuckles and a tattoo of a snake on his neck. He looked like the kind of man who'd never worked a day in his life, but not because he was lazy. Tommy was a loan shark, and a guy who made sure other people paid their debts, and a guy who knew people, bad people, dangerous people. He was the kind of guy that people would cross the street to avoid. He came to the coffee shop every morning at 8 a.m. He'd order the same thing, black coffee, no sugar, 1 shot of espresso on the side. He'd sit in the corner booth and read the newspaper and leave a $20 tip on a $4 coffee. And he'd watch Maria. Maria tried to ignore him. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. She'd been told by other employees to stay away from him. Don't make eye contact, another waitress had warned. Don't smile, don't be nice. Guys like that, they take kindness as interest. But Maria couldn't help being kind. That was just who she was. She'd ask how his day was. She'd make sure his coffee was exactly right. She'd remember how he liked his eggs when he ordered breakfast, because that's what Maria did. She was nice to people. For 2 months, Tommy came in every morning, and Maria was nice to him every single time. Then one day, he asked her out. "You're beautiful," he said, just like that. No introduction, no leading up to it, just, "You're beautiful. I'd like to take you to dinner." Maria said no, politely, kindly, but definitely no. Tommy kept asking, every single day, "Come out with me. Let me buy you dinner. I could make your life easier." Each time Maria said no, and each time Tommy just smiled and nodded and came back the next day to ask again. After 3 weeks, Maria started considering it, not because she liked him, but because she was desperate. because one person working 3 jobs wasn't enough money, because Sophie's shoes had holes in them, because the landlord had raised the rent again, because there were nights she couldn't afford both food and heat. So when Tommy asked again, she almost said yes, but that's when everything changed. Sophie's 3rd grade class was doing a project. Each kid had to bring something special from home and talk about what it meant to them. Mrs. Martinez had explained that it didn't have to be expensive or fancy. It just had to be something that mattered. Sophie brought Rosie. She stood up in front of the class on a Friday afternoon. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "This is Rosie," Sophie said, holding up the worn doll. "My mom gave me Rosie when I was born. She's the only thing I own that isn't a thing I need to live. She's just mine. I love her." The other kids were quiet. Some of them didn't understand. They had closets full of toys. For them, a doll was just a thing. But some of them understood. Some of them had seen their parents struggle. Some of them knew what it meant to have just one thing that was all yours. Mrs. Martinez was crying. Not sad crying, the good kind. At the end of the school day, Mrs. Martinez asked Sophie to stay behind. "Sophie," she said, "I want you to know that I'm really proud of you. What you said today was very brave and very honest. That took courage." "Thank you," Sophie said. "I also want you to know," Mrs. Martinez continued, "that if you ever need to talk about something, anything, you can come to me. If something at home is bothering you, if you're worried about your mom, if anything is wrong, you can tell me, okay?" Sophie nodded. She didn't say anything, but she held Mrs. Martinez's hand for a second. It was a Thursday night. Maria had just come home from her morning shift at the coffee shop. She was tired and had to be back at the office building to clean in 4 hours. She made Sophie dinner, pasta with butter and salt, and tucked her into bed. Maria was sitting at the small kitchen table, thinking about Tommy, thinking about his offer, thinking about the fact that she was running out of time and options, when there was a knock on the door. It was midnight. Nobody knocked on apartment doors at midnight unless something was wrong. Maria opened the door, and there was Tommy Russo, not in regular clothes, in a suit, clean, serious, like he was going to a funeral. "We need to talk," he said. Maria's heart went down to her stomach. She thought he was there to hurt her. She thought he was going to force his way in. She thought this was finally going to be the moment when being nice to the wrong person caught up with her. But Tommy just walked inside and sat at her kitchen table. He looked around the apartment, at the water stain on the ceiling, at the windows that didn't close all the way, at the furniture that was held together with duct tape. "How much money would it take," he asked, "to fix this place, to make sure you and Sophie are okay?" "I don't," Maria started. "How much?" Tommy repeated. Not mean, just direct. "I don't know," Maria said. "A lot. This is my life." Tommy nodded. He took out his wallet and put $500 on the table. "I want to marry you," he said. Maria actually laughed. It came out like a gasp. "No," she said. "I don't even know you. Tommy, no." "I'll give you a year," he said. "1 year. We date. You get to know me. And at the end of the year, if you still don't want to marry me, I'll leave you alone. But in that year, I'll take care of you and Sophie. No more 3 jobs, no more stress. Just let me help." "Why?" Maria asked. "Why would you do that?" Tommy looked at her for a long time. "Because my mother looked like you, and she worked 3 jobs, and she never got help from anybody, and she died when she was 35 from exhaustion and stress, and I was too little to understand that I should have helped her." He stood up and walked to the door. "Think about it, but don't take too long. Life doesn't give us much time." Maria didn't tell Maria about Tommy's visit. She didn't tell her about the $500, which she paid back. She didn't tell her about the offer. But Sophie noticed that her mother stopped going to work 3 jobs. Somehow, the bills were being paid. Somehow, there was enough money. There was even enough money for new shoes for Sophie, and she cried when she got them. "What happened?" Sophie asked. "A friend is helping," Maria said. "What friend?" "His name is Tommy. He comes to the coffee shop." Sophie didn't know Tommy. She'd never met him, but she knew that something had changed, and she was smart enough to understand that Tommy was part of it. One day after school, Sophie asked her mother directly, "Do you like Tommy?" Maria was quiet for a long time. "I think he's a good person inside," she said, "but he's not the kind of person I want in our lives." "Why?" Sophie asked. "Because he's done bad things. I think he's trying to change, but there are people he knows, people he works with, and they're dangerous, and I don't want to put you in danger." Sophie thought about that. "Is he nice to you?" she asked. "Yes," Maria said. "He's very nice." "Do you have enough food now?" "Yes." "Do you have to work so much?" "No, I only work at the coffee shop now." Sophie sat with this information for a moment. "Does he want to marry you?" Maria's eyes went wide. "Who told you that?" "Nobody," Sophie said. "I just know things. Do you want to marry him?" "I don't know," Maria said. "It's complicated." "It doesn't sound complicated," Sophie said. A week later, Tommy came to the apartment again. This time he came for dinner. Maria had cooked. Not fancy food, just good food. Sophie met him for the first time. Tommy was big and scary-looking to a 7-year-old girl, but he was also nice. He asked about school. He asked about her favorite books. He listened to her answers. He didn't talk down to her. After dinner, Sophie asked to speak to Tommy alone. Maria left the room nervous. Sophie and Tommy sat at the kitchen table, and Sophie looked up at him with her serious 7-year-old eyes. "My mom likes you," Sophie said, "but she's scared." "Of me?" Tommy asked. "Of what you do. She says you've done bad things." Tommy nodded. He didn't deny it. He didn't make excuses. "I'm trying to change, but that's hard, and I understand if she doesn't trust me." "I want to make you a deal," Sophie said. Tommy leaned back. He was surprised. A 7-year-old was trying to make him a deal? "What kind of deal?" he asked. Sophie went to her room and came back with Rosie, the doll that meant everything to her, the doll she'd told her whole class about, the doll that was the only thing in her life that wasn't about survival. "If you marry my mom," Sophie said, "I will give you this doll, and I will trust you with my life, but you have to promise that you will always take care of her. You have to promise that you will never hurt her or do anything bad that could hurt her. You have to promise that you will be a good father to me. Do you promise?" Tommy looked at the doll. He looked at Sophie. "Why would you give me this?" he asked. "Your mom said it's really important to you." "Because she's important to her," Sophie said, "and she's important to me, so you're important to me now, and I want you to know that I trust you, but you have to promise." Tommy took the doll with both hands, like it was sacred, like it was the most important thing anyone had ever given him. "I promise," he said, and he cried. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just Maria, Sophie, Tommy, and the people Tommy worked with, which made Maria nervous, but Tommy had explained that these were the people who'd understand. Sophie was the flower girl. She wore a white dress that didn't have holes in it. She walked down the aisle with flowers in her hands, and Rosie, the doll, in Tommy's jacket pocket, right over his heart. After the ceremony, Tommy took out the doll and showed it to everyone. "This doll," he said, "is my promise to this family. This doll represents my commitment to be a good man, to take care of these two people who mean everything to me." All the scary guys Tommy worked with had tears in their eyes, because they understood what the doll meant, that Tommy had changed, that he was serious about being different. 6 months after the wedding, the FBI came knocking on Tommy Russo's door. They had evidence, money laundering, illegal gambling operations, money he'd lent to people and hurt them when they couldn't pay back, years of criminal activity. But Tommy surprised everyone. He took a deal. He agreed to testify against the other people in his organization. He agreed to wear a wire. He agreed to cooperate completely. The prosecutors asked him why. Why would he turn against his own people? because I made a promise to a 7-year-old girl, and I don't break promises. Tommy went into the Federal Witness Protection Program. He, Maria, and Sophie disappeared. New names, new city, new life. A year after Tommy disappeared with the Witness Protection Program, Maria received a letter. No return address, just regular mail. It was from Mrs. Martinez, Sophie's old teacher. Dear Maria, I heard that you and Sophie moved away. I don't know where you are, but I wanted to reach out because Sophie was such a special student. I want you to know that Sophie did something remarkable in my class. She brought her most precious possession, an old doll, and she talked about what it meant to her. And then she talked about what she'd do for love and family. I think Sophie taught me more that day than I taught her in the whole year. She taught me that love is about giving up the things we hold most dear for the people we care about. I don't know what happened in your family, but I hope you and Sophie are safe and happy wherever you are. Love, Mrs. Martinez. Maria cried when she read that letter, because she understood that Mrs. Martinez had known something was wrong, had seen the signs, had reached out in the only way she could. Tommy, Maria, and Sophie live in a small town in Colorado now. Different names, but same people. Tommy works in construction. He's good at it. He's honest with his boss. He pays his workers fairly. He builds houses for families who need them. Sophie goes to a good school. She's still creative and smart. She still has Rosie, but now Rosie sits on a shelf in her room, not in Tommy's jacket pocket. She knows the story now, knows what her doll really means. Maria doesn't work 3 jobs anymore. She works at a community center, helping other single mothers figure out how to take care of themselves and their kids. She's happy, actually happy, not exhausted happy, real happy. And Tommy is the man he promised Sophie he'd be. He comes home every day. He eats dinner with his family. He reads to Sophie before bed. He helps Maria with whatever she needs. He's never even thought about doing anything illegal again. Because he made a promise to a little girl with a worn doll. The thing about this story that people don't understand is this. Sophie didn't save Tommy by making a deal. Tommy was already choosing to change. He was already trying to be different. What Sophie did was give him a reason. She gave him something real to fight for. She gave him permission to be better than his past. Because sometimes that's all we need. Just one person who believes in us enough to hand us their most precious thing and say, I trust you. But here's the real twist that makes this story matter. 3 years after Tommy entered the Witness Protection Program, the organization he testified against was dismantled. 12 men went to federal prison. Hundreds of victims got restitution. Money that had been stolen from people was returned to them. And it all happened because Tommy decided to change. Because he was willing to risk his life to testify against his own people. Because he chose love over loyalty to a criminal organization. Sophie didn't save Tommy from being a bad person. Tommy was never really a bad person. He was just a person who'd been trapped in a bad life. Sophie freed him. By handing him her doll and saying, I trust you, she gave him permission to be free. Thank you for watching. If this story made you cry, smash that like button right now. Subscribe because there are more stories like this, stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And comment, what made you cry? What part of this story touched your heart? Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Share this with someone who needs to know that love can change people. Share this with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the smallest acts of trust can change the world.